Welcome back to Overdrive. I am joined by Tim from Rise Against. First night of the tour, European leg of the tour. How are you, man? It's great to see you. Thank you for joining me.
Yeah, thank you. I'm good. I'm great. This is night one. We go on in a couple hours, so it's exciting to be back with the LS Dunes guys and Spiritual Cramp. Um, we left off like 2 months ago with those bands, and so it's kind of a fun, like almost like a reunion here.
Yeah, a little
It's
reunion.
exciting to go
Awesome.
back and get to do this all over again because we had a blast the first time, so
Yeah,
it'll be fun to bring this whole thing to Europe.
fantastic. Well, I figured the best place to start would be by, let's just say, okay, it's been 3 years since Nowhere Generation. Um,
Mm,
let's start with, obviously, there's a new album there somewhere.
mm.
Um, so let's just talk about the kind of the writing of this new album and when it came into play. Was it directly kind of straight after when you wound up the campaign for Nowhere, or was there some ideas and some downtime, some chill out, or what way did it work out?
Let's see if I can remember. It came after the tour. We were really focused on Nowhere Generation when we were touring. And then we wrapped that up. We took a break, which is pretty standard for us. The touring is, it's intense and then it takes a lot out of you. And that's kind of our moment where everyone can kind of like go reconnect with home and then kind of like recharge your batteries. And so we started writing probably a few months after we got um, off the road from Nowhere Gen. We weren't really rushing or pressuring ourselves. Like, I mean, this is our 10th record. We've been doing this for a long time. And so we kind of, it's very organic in terms of like timing. Like we write when we feel like that urgency to write. You know what I mean? We record when we feel like it's ready. You know what I mean? We don't do anything that's like too rushed. And so that was this record was when ideas started percolating and like we started sharing them. We're like, okay, I think we have some songs here. Like, let's start putting them together. And then we just took our time
Mm.
putting those songs together.
Yeah, very good. So the first single, Nod, was released just a few days ago. Um, when you were putting that out, I mean, you mentioned something there. This is your 10th record, so this question's probably going to seem a little bit silly, but do you still get a little bit kind of, nail bitey or apprehensive when you've been away for a while, like a couple of years, and then you're putting out new music, and you're kind of like, oh, is it going to go down well? Because there's just so much out there these days. People have
Mhm.
such short attention spans, and so like, are you inquisitive? Like, do you kind of have a little peek on the internet to see is it doing well or what the comments are?
By the time we release it, like by the time you hear it, it had to get through so many checks and balances just with the four of us, every single note, part, lyric, sound. And I'm really confident in the song at that point. Like we're all really confident in the song. So it's like this is the best version of Rise Against in 2025. And
Mm,
so out aside from that, there's nothing I can do about how people accept it. You know what I mean? And that goes back to like when you were first a band, you know what I mean? And you took that
yeah.
leap of like, I'm just gonna make music and put it out there. And it was a surprise to see that anybody connected to it. And so in that sense, I'm always appreciative because I don't expect people to love our band. I don't expect them to love our songs. I'm always consistently appreciative. There's a lot of gratitude when someone goes, "Oh, I love this song," or especially when you can put out a song, this late in our career, people are like, "Yo, this is a great song. Like that's awesome. Like that's what you want." And if people don't like it, that's kind of okay too. You know what I mean? Like it's like we're not out here trying to shove anything down anybody's throat. But
Well,
like, if you're hearing a new Rise Against song, you're hearing what we think is the best version of ourselves right now.
would Nod be a good representation of what's to come on the album? Or
Yeah, I would say if I had to like piece it in like a group of songs that we've put together, Nah is probably among the more like traditional like Rise Against. Like I think that you hear Rise Against, you hear um sort of what we've done, what we have been doing, you know what I mean? but in a little bit of like a new way. So like I think it falls in the category of pretty like traditional rise, which is a sound that we will always, embrace. And there's stuff on the record I think that will be less traditional for sure.
Can you give an insight into when perhaps a next single will come? Are we looking at kind of next month or the month after or
I honestly don't know.
okay.
And I'll tell you why. Like, I'm sure it's out there. I'm sure somebody knows, but like, I'm so focused on like tonight in Dublin. You know what I mean? I'm
Sure,
so focused on like
I got you.
my day to day. I trust like everybody else to kind of decide how we release music. So I'm not even trying to hold anything back from you. I honestly don't even know. But our plan is to trickle out new music
Brilliant.
very soon. You know what I mean? And hopefully let you know when like an entirely new and 10th album will come out. Yes. So
So having formed in '99 and then getting signed to Fat Wreck, which is just such a legendary, amazing label that has
mhm.
so much for the punk rock scene, to where you guys are today. It's been just a fantastic journey, to say the least. And so many things have changed in this industry. It's almost unrecognizable now, from a fan's point of view and from, I suppose, the business side, from an artist point of view, especially touring and the cost of touring. Just from what you see and observe, I mean, do you kind of fear for the future of artists being able to do what you guys did, in the early 2000s, going out with Sick of It All and just those amazing times? It's just becoming so fucking difficult now.
Yeah, it changes every year. Certainly in a post-COVID world, you watched everything get more expensive. You know what I mean? And bands, at almost any level, we are cumbersome productions to travel around the world. You know what I mean? We are not DJs. We don't show up with USB drives and laptops. You know what I mean? Like we require, you know, a lot of equipment to help reproduce the songs that you love. You know what I mean? And that tech is changing too. You know what I mean? So like people are finding ways to kind of shrink that down. But things like airfare and hotels and travel and like the money that a really great crew person deserves, like all those things, it gets pretty tricky. I do worry about the next generation of artists because I hope they can find ways to get their music in front of people. And then I think music is different now, at least the community of music is different now than it was when we grew up. And I hope that there are still scenes like the Fat Records scene and like the bands like Sick of It All and Strung Out or the Mad Caddies and all the early Fat Records band, No Use for a Name, that took us out. That was a huge part of who we are and why we got like where we are, is because when we signed to Fat, we joined this community of bands that were all very supportive of each other. Those communities are necessary for bands like ours. We aren't standalone, siloed success story. You know what I mean? Or
Oh
like
yeah,
we
it's
are part of this incredible network of punk bands like Pennywise and Bad Religion that took us out when we were young. That helped us immensely. I don't think we could have done this on our own. You know what I mean? And that's what we try to do with like young bands like Spiritual Cramp, who will be with us tonight in Dublin, is that we see ourselves in them. We see like how can we bring this music, this next generation of punk to our fans, who might not know it, the same way someone helped us out. I think that does exist. I hope it continues to exist. I think that people have to work hard to make it exist, as even our scenes get kind of more siloed. You know what I mean? So I think that it might require more effort, but I feel like we have to keep an eye on how important that is to support these younger bands for sure. And younger
absolutely.
bands will probably have to get creative to keep themselves on the road. And Rise Against, we got creative to keep ourselves on the road even
Yeah.
25 years ago. You know what I mean? We were all sleeping on floors and packed into a van and making no money. Tour was something that you actually saved up money to go on tour sometimes,
You come home with
because you were
nothing. Yeah.
yeah, because you were going to it was a money losing proposition. You know what I mean? So like
Yeah.
that's the other thing too, is that young bands can't expect to have that silver spoon handed to them just because they play music. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it was 6 years before we stepped into our first tour bus, and before we stopped sharing hotel rooms, you know what I mean? Like that kind of thing, like it takes some creativity to get to where you want to be.
It's your first time back in Ireland in 8 years, I believe. Now, I'm assuming Nod will be on the set list tonight, but will you guys be playing anything that is yet to be released yet? Just kind of trying out a couple of tunes from the forthcoming album, or will that come later on the tour when you're a little bit more comfortable with things?
It's funny, I just left a conversation about that with the guys. We're definitely going to play Nod tonight. And we were looking at the set list. And so I think that we will kind of gauge the appetite for more new stuff as the tour goes on and see if people really want to hear some unreleased stuff, that kind of thing. And if it is, then we'll definitely dive into it. But tonight we'll just the only thing new people will hear will be Nod. Yeah.
Okay, just a quick question about the remixes from Idols and Health, which are two great bands. I actually love Health very much. They were just very left field and exciting. I love all that stuff as somebody who grew up in the 90s when remixes was just all the rage at one point, just a different perspective. Would there be kind of a possibility of doing something complete, like not just remixes, but original music with different artists like that you guys would like to go down that road, like something totally left of center?
Yeah, I don't think we would rule anything out. I think those bands are so inspiring. I think the same way that like when we started our band, we were young people that had been inspired by traditional punk bands like Descendants or Black Flag or the Ramones or Bad Religion. But that doesn't mean that we aren't equally inspired by a lot of the new music that comes out um, today, this year. You know what I mean? So when I hear Idols or Health, or I hear Spiritual Cramp, or I hear like Fontaine's DC, or I hear like a lot of the stuff that's happening in the hardcore scene, like that stuff, those are earworms that like you hear what people do and the picture they're painting, and you're like, oh, that's cool, and then you start to get inspired by that thing, by music like that, and so I could see um that stuff would inevitably like filter into our own creative process, because I'd like to think that we aren't just old curmudgeony guys who are unwilling to, be inspired by new music. I think it's the opposite. We're always hearing new bands that kind of, I think eventually get into the songwriting.
Yeah. Again, just going back to Fat Wreck, like the amount of bands that I've spoken to, Strung Out, the guys from Strung Out last year, just about the importance of that label and how it was just, I mean, it was so important for that particular area of music that was coming out. Was it strange? And I believe that they're really hands-on, like they really kind of nurture and care, and the staff and everyone that worked there back in the day. Was it strange when you guys kind of obviously moved on? I believe you moved on to Geffen Records then, was that right? And
Yeah.
for Siren Song of the Counterculture. Was it a kind of a strange feeling? Maybe I phrased that wrong, but like leaving this essentially this kind of like really tight knit sort of punk rock family, if you like. Was it a strange feeling to go from that small kind of family environment into, I hate to use the word corporate, but into that bigger label at that time?
Yeah, I would say it was a different, like Fat Wreck was very in-house family. We knew everyone that worked there. Like I knew their spouses, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it was our first label. We loved the atmosphere there. We loved being a part of the Fat family. And then when we were approached to sign, it was originally DreamWorks. The same time we were approached by like probably 10 labels around the same exact time. Um, at that point, we definitely weren't like the first band from our world to sign around those years. And so it didn't come up as I mean, we didn't expect it, but we weren't as surprised by the process because at that point we were touring with AFI, Thrice, Thursday, bands like The Used or Story of the Year or Yellow Card, um, Poison the Well.
Yeah.
So every band Avenged Sevenfold we were touring with, and every band I just named, um, had all signed to a major label before anybody ever called us. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah, yeah, I suppose, yeah.
So to put yourself in those years, we're watching all our friends sign, and our phone wasn't really ringing off the hook. So we were like, all right, this is awesome for them. Maybe it's not our destiny. But then eventually the our phone started ringing too. And that's when we were like kind of canvassing and finding out what people are doing and if they're liking those labels and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um, and DreamWorks had, at that point, they had Jimmy World, AFI, Say It's a Day, I think Sparta. Um, I'm probably forgetting something, Elliott Smith. They had bands that like we really respected, and
Yeah.
at a place that we had felt like it was cool. And we were watching our band outgrow the resources of Fat Records, even though Fat was at that point probably one of the biggest independent labels on the planet. But
Yeah.
we were touring nonstop, and our songs were getting to more places than someone like Fat could really cater to.
Mm.
And that's when we turned to Mike and we were like, hey, we have this opportunity. What do you think? And he gave us his blessing. He was bummed to see us go. But I think he knew and we knew what we had to take this shot and this chance and just to
Yeah.
see what would happen. And if it didn't work, we would come groveling back and saying, please take us back to Fat Records.
Having grown up and having attended some absolutely legendary shows, as a fan yourself, what will forever stick in your mind as your top show?
So top show would be Nirvana in 1994 at the Aragon Ballroom in Chicago, which is about a 4,000 cap room,
Mm.
with Mudhoney supporting, and Jawbreaker was the opening band.
Oh wow.
Yeah, Jawbreaker wasn't supposed to open. Somebody else was on the tour, and they dropped off the tour for one reason or other. And then Jawbreaker, who had also recently signed to Geffen, which was also Nirvana's label, which would also eventually become Rise Against label.
Sure, yeah.
And I remember walking into the Aragon and seeing Jawbreaker on stage. I did not expect to see them, and just my mind being blown because that was my first time seeing Jawbreaker live. And then watching Nirvana, and they were touring In Utero. And it was just an epic show. I didn't know it would be, the last time they played Chicago and one of the last
Yeah.
tours they ever did. But I remember it just being like this really cool moment that would only become cooler as, rock history would kind of cement their legacy.
Thank you so much for your time. I won't keep you anymore. Obviously, first night of the tour, and yeah, just it's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you, man. And yeah, just best of luck with all of the dates and with the album that's coming out. I'm sure we're all going to be keeping an eye on things. And yeah, it's been amazing to talk to you. Cheers.
Cool, man. The pleasure's mine. Thanks for the interview. Yeah.